Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my review of a Rolex copy that it's okay to love. Why? Because I love it and I say it's okay if you love it too. But seriously, I think there's a vastly different attitude towards modern budget watches that borrow the designs of long discontinued vintage Rolex models rather than modern budget watches that borrow the designs of current catalogue Rolex models. And this watch is exactly the former. It's a homage of a 1655 reference Rolex Explorer 2 Steve McQueen from the early 1970s. And just to give you even more reason to love it, it's hard to come by and it holds its value extremely well as a consequence. So this is the Steinhardt Ocean 1 Vintage GMT, a watch that if you are a regular here, you know that I love. I reviewed the 42mm in the middle of last year. I included the 39 in a three-way GMT Fight Club in December. And the watch made my top 5, bottom 5 list in the top end, by the way, just before Christmas. I think it is the best value Swiss-made automatic GMT on the market. These are only about $600 if you can snag one, that is. That's around 1% of the price of an original, by the way. So why, having reviewed it only last year, am I looking at it again today? Well, this is the even better looking and even harder to find OLKO Boutique Special Edition. No fauxtina on the dial and hand, so it looks like a 1655 would have looked in the early 1970s. I didn't just buy one though, it is kindly on loan to the channel from a local subscriber called Julian. Thank you, Julian. You clearly have an eye for a great looking and great value watch. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it ourselves. Okay, famous last words. I'm not going to hang around today having looked at essentially a different version or two of this watch on the channel previously. You know Steinhardt, Gunther Steinhardt is the founder. They're a German brand, but Swiss made. They've been making watches for 2 decades plus now. Leaning heavily, shall we say, on the Rolex catalogue, old and new, for design inspiration. This is now the 5th Steinhardt that I've looked at on the channel, and I've always been impressed with the build quality, especially the value for money, even if it does appear at times that parts are shared across multiple models, multiple ranges of models, meaning they have a slightly generic feel to some of them. I guess it does help to keep costs down though. This is by far the best Steinhardt that I've looked at. And such good value as well, €560, excluding delivery, mind you, for this OLKO exclusive edition that features, as discussed, white hands, white indices, but also flat sapphire crystal and a cyclops. I believe that OLKO are a German boutique, hence the tie-in with Steinhardt. They also sell the fauxtina version without the cyclops with domed sapphire crystal for exactly the same price, claiming this one also as an exclusive. Can't be that exclusive though, because GNOMON sell the same model for $650 including delivery, mind you, on this one. You note all 3 models sold out. So 39mm in diameter. If you want a 42, if you prefer a larger watch, you're not going to get one in white. You do have to go for the orange and fauxtina look. Slimmer because of the flat sapphire, down to 12.8 as opposed to 14.3 of the domed version. 47 lug to lug, nice and compact, quite flat, a little bit of downturn there though. 20mm lug width, tapering all the way down to 16, back up to 18 at the clasp. Sized up for me, 7-inch wrist, it weighs pretty much where you'd expect it to, 148 grams. Right in that stainless steel sports watch sweet spot. That's because it is all made of 316L stainless steel. The case, the screw down crown, 300 meters of water resistance, by the way. That's probably 100 more than I would have expected. Stainless steel fixed bezel with indents, black paint filled there on the evens of the 24-hour scale. I'll show you how the GMT works in just a second. It's a solid stainless steel bracelet. Now, even though this is a compact diameter dimension watch with a compact lug to lug, they still use female end links. So if you have a smaller than average wrist, if you have a compact wrist, shall we say, this is going to wear very nicely indeed. Screw lengths, good chunky screws, no problem sizing this one up at all. It is, however, a fairly generic Steinhardt clasp. I've seen this one now on 5 out of 5 Steinhardts. They all feature the same clasp. I've left Julian one final sticker to peel off for himself. High polish fold over with Steinhardt logo etched there, high polish chamfered edge, 4 holes of micro adjust, which is fine given the links aren't enormous. One other part clearly carried over from pretty much every other Steiny as well is the caseback, that kind of classic Trident seahorse number. They have, however, in very, very small letters around the outer edge, marked this one as an OLKO exclusive edition. And behind the slightly generic caseback is one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of this watch. It features either an ETA 2893-2 or a Sellita SW330 Elaboré grade. So if you get the Sellita, you get the Elaboré version thereof. Steinhardt keeping their options open in terms of supply. It doesn't really matter which one is behind the caseback of this specific watch because it is running like a champ. 0 seconds per day variance in the default flat on its back position. 21 joule hacking and hand winding. You can see it's a high beat auto there, 28,800 vibrations per hour, roughly 40-hour power reserve. Now the ETA 2893 and clones thereof, they're not strictly true GMT movements. If I pull the crown out to the first position, the movement winds. If I pull it out to the second position, I can then adjust the GMT hand and the date. GMT hand jumps in 1 hour increments, so if you live in one of those slightly awkward half-hour time zones, or you're trying to track one of those slightly awkward half-hour time zones, then you are a little bit out of luck. Also, if you're taking this watch traveling and you're adjusting the home time, then the GMT hand moves with the home time, so it can be a bit of a faff to adjust. But if you're based in one place and tracking a second time zone, that's really what the ETA 2893 is good for. If I pull the crown out to the second position once more, I can adjust the date by rolling it in the other direction, nicely visible because of the cyclops on this particular model. Talking of which, what do you think of the cyclops? I reckon cyclopses are always about 50-50. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think in this particular case, this watch is better with the cyclops than without the cyclops. I think it's more legible, not just the date, but the watch overall with the switch to flat sapphire, and a 1.5mm reduction in the overall thickness of the watch is also not to be sniffed at. And I think this OLKO Special Edition is a really, really good looking watch. I love a bit of fauxtina, I'm a sucker for it, but in this case I think the switch to white really works well. It does modernise what is in essence a vintage design. So everything is just painted on the dial, big triangle at 12, large batons at 6 and 9, slightly larger ones on the hour markers which correspond to the even hours on the 24-hour bezel, slightly smaller ones slightly further out, corresponding to the odd hours for the GMT hand. There are thin printed lines for the rest of the minutes as well. Steinhardt, their logo, and Ocean GMT printed in white above the pinion, and 1000 feet, 330 meters automatic printed beneath it. Swiss made, as discussed, printed beneath the large rectangle at 6. And it's a great handset on this watch. Fairly thick white fence post hands, but with blacked out centers. They float over the top of the dial, and I love the orange GMT hand with that super long syringe tip. Decent sized second hand as well, all in white, so it's extra noticeable with a lollipop on the end. All of this is loomed. I'll show you that in just a second. You know, everything being printed on as opposed to applied, it's not particularly flash. Again, perhaps they saved a few dollars there, but it is very well done and it looks superb. As does that stainless steel bezel insert, circular brush finish to the top surface. They've managed to put a high polish chamfer on the outer edge of it as well. Under macro, you can see the paint fill, perhaps not super luxury watch standard consistent, but it's barely noticeable to the naked eye, I promise you. How does it compare to the fauxtina 39mm though? Well, this is how it compares. I managed to borrow Mr. P's regular fauxtina style 39mm for comparison. You can see the two watches are identical layout, identical case, crown, bezel, bracelet, etc, etc. The only difference is the glass. You can see a domed sapphire on the right on the fauxtina version, whereas the flat sapphire with cyclops as discussed on the OLKO version. The direct comparison shows that the cyclops is not super magnifying, but it definitely helps with the legibility of the date if that's something that's important to you. The only other difference is the difference in that dial printing and the different type of lume they have used. It's old radium style on the fauxtina version, it's BGW9 on the OLKO exclusive. But you know what? It's not a particularly impressive application of BGW9, to be honest. Looks okay initially, but when I turn the speed up, the dial is the first thing to go. It doesn't really do very well. The hands follow shortly thereafter. The last thing visible is the second hand, and that, to be honest, is not a lot of use, is it? So it looks like we found our starter for 10 for the moans and niggle section then. Not much else joining it today, to be honest though. For 6,650, these are fantastic watches. If you're swithering between the 42 and the 39, I would steer you towards the 39. It wears really nicely on my 7-inch wrist. The 42 is big and it is flat. Steinies always wear quite flat, not a lot of curvature there, as you can see. So perhaps try them if you can. If you can't, I would go small rather than going big. Legibility is excellent thanks to the white on black hands. White on black markers and indices also help. And I think the switch to sapphire crystal overall is a good one. The dome sapphire on the 39 had a bit of a flecto problem. You get bounce back with this one because it's flat and because it could do with more AR coating, to be honest, but overall it's still pretty legible. And that's another wrist shot. Again, you can see the bounce back from that flat sapphire crystal, but overall it's not too much of a problem. You can see the high polish edge of that bezel, the chamfer that I talked about earlier on, adding a little bit of vitality to what otherwise is a mostly brushed top surface. Pocket shot to finish, just about on 150 grams, but a slightly smaller dimension means I would be tempted to wear this one a little bit lower, a little bit looser around the knuckle, as opposed to higher and tighter like I would if it was the 42. Moans and niggles, well, the homage thing will undoubtedly put some people off, but they probably didn't click on the video in the first place or clicked off after leaving a nasty comment some time ago. If you're okay with that though, there is precious little else here to complain about. More AR would not have gone amiss, more lume would also not have gone amiss, and the clasp, yeah, it is a little bit generic. Those high polished signs don't really fit well with the rest of the bracelet. I would have loved to have seen something a bit more specific to this watch, a bit more retro looking if that was possible from Steinhardt here, but they have just used a carryover part. But I guess the biggest neg of this one is you can't actually go out and buy one today. I will leave links in the description. The best you're going to be able to do though is leave your email address for notifications of when OLKO and GNOMON, if you don't want the white version, are back in stock. That is testament to how good this watch is though. Timeless design, Swiss movement, great build quality, and a very reasonable price tag. So there you have it. If you have a GMT problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find one, maybe you can buy a Steinhardt GMT. If you've made it this far, then you should probably watch the full review of the 42mm and the 3-way GMT battle featuring the 39. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in a future video.